Imagine someone you love just died. I know we've all heard it somewhere before. Hurt people, hurt people. But have you ever taken a chance to think about what those words mean or how they mean? Does that make sense? When you actually stop to think about what hurt people means, it looks sort of like misery loves company, which I think is a lot kinder of a way to phrase it. Now, I believe the movie Hamlet shows us this exact thing, how hurt people, or more so how someone who's down in the grieving process wants other people not to be down with them, but to understand them and where they come from. The following video will contain spoilers for Hamlet. If you're used to movies that have a really long runtime and pay off in the second half of the movie while just doing a bunch of buildup, then maybe you should watch Hamlet. But if you're not about all that noise, if you have no intention of watching a semi-slow paced movie, then yes, this video is for you. It is perfect. The movie Hamlet starts out with Agnes. Who is Agnes? The mother of Hamlet. But we don't know that yet because Hamlet hasn't even been conceived yet. See, Agnes is a natural recluse in the town. Everyone thinks she's a witch. Why? Because she practices witchcraft in the 16th century, so of course they would think she's a witch, when in all reality it's mostly just herbalism. Now, the way this movie starts, you don't realize that the reason why she practices so much herbalism and is so gun-ho about it and sticks to it so hard is because it helps her feel connected to her mother, who she still is grieving years later. Also, if you know anything about the name Hamlet or the play, obviously Shakespeare's got to be in this movie because it's about the whole reasoning behind making the play Hamlet in this interpretation. But it was really goofy. They're like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? You don't know who he is, even though him and Agnes talk about the bones of Midnight Summer's Dream and things like that. And he's a poet in the 16th century that's not quoting Shakespeare. Oh, I wonder who he could be. And then they reveal his name at the end of the movie, like no one was expecting it to be Shakespeare. Like we knew within the first 5 minutes of seeing this guy, his first idea of Riz was saying some poems. So of course he's going to be Shakespeare. That's the Shakespeare thing to do. I digress though. So this movie starts out with Agnes tending to her hawk in the forest doing witchcraft. Found by Shakespeare, start a relationship, get together with Shakespeare, and the movie tugs along with them having the relationship, conceiving a child, and then going to get their family's blessing so they can get married so the child is not out of wedlock. Now Agnes just needs someone's blessing, but she can't get her stepmother's blessing nor her father's, so she decides to get her brother's blessing, which, you know, it was a whole process in the movie. She's a person practicing magic in the 16th century, so people aren't really fond of her in the town and they think she's like, you know, evil, but in reality she's kind of nice from what the movie shows us, this version of the character, right? Because this is an interpretation. The first birth was honestly so crazy to watch. This lady walked out in the forest. She's like, I gotta give birth my way. This is how all the women in my family give birth. She goes in the forest, gives birth out back next to a pit, and walks away like nothing happened. Like she just gave birth. It was the craziest scene. Like her feats go crazy. So she has this first baby, then they have like a happy family dynamic, and then she has another set of kids. They didn't know that these kids would be twins, but this whole birth is honestly crazy. They got a lot of like life manipulation going on in this birth. So she gives birth and like, oh, there's a second child. Second child comes out, not breathing. Then it's like, well, she wants to hold the baby because like she just had a stillborn child. So she goes to hold the baby. The handmaid's like, no, you can't hold her. It's bad luck. This is how you lose a baby. Just have the one that you already gave birth to it. Be happy with it. She's like, no, nonsense. I need to see my baby. I don't care if it's bad luck. Because apparently if you see your baby when they pass away, then all your other children would die later in life. Yeah, they had to come up with a lot of things back then. So she goes to see this baby and she's sad. And next thing you know, the baby just comes miraculously back to life. And it's like, what the heck? By the way, this is not the last time in this movie that something's gonna miraculously swap life spaces with things. So yeah, then the family gets even happier. They're moving through. They have these two twins. They have the oldest daughter. They go through. Their father, he quits his job to pursue his passion, working on plays in the big city. Oh my gosh, who is this man? He's working on plays in the 16th century? I wonder who he could be. Yeah, everything's super great, super awesome. Then one morning, while father's out of town, it shows our perspective from the twins. One of the twins is laying in bed, too tired. The other twin, Hamlet, they don't nearly give anybody names in this movie. They just kind of let you assume who everyone's name is. The other twin, Hamlet, it has the zoomies, and he's like, yo, let's go see some cats. Yo, what are you doing? Come on, let's go. Meanwhile, the girl twin is sleeping in the bed like a mouse. Fast forward, this kid's running across town, doing everything, anywhere, like going everywhere, going on his own little adventure. He gets back home. It turns out she's sick. Now, the movie hints that this is possibly a bee allergy reaction because the mother says not to go outside to someone else, like another adult, and deal with the bees today because they seem agitated. And then we see like a bump, like a swollen bump on the daughter's neck. So it's very likely that this was just an allergy swelling back then, and they just didn't know it because of lack of medical knowledge. The daughter is super sick, about to die sick. They're preparing her for her death. And when Shakespeare gets a word of this, he goes through so many hoops and bounds just to get back home to see his daughter before she dies. The night before Shakespeare gets there, Hamlet, the twin brother, decides to go in the bed with the twin sister. And he says, don't worry, I'll protect protect you. I'm brave and strong because dad told me to protect all the women of the house while he's gone. He's like, we'll swap places in the bed so that way when death goes to look for you, they won't know where to find you and they'll take me instead. Why? I don't know. But guess what happens? They wake up the next morning and now this kid is dying. So yeah, he basically did just swap death like spots. It was a wild part of the movie. I was like, okay, there's like actual magic in this movie now. So these two swap spots. Now the son is dying. It takes him a second to notice it because the daughter wakes up fine and dandy, like super healthy, everything great. Yeah, Hamlet's just like over there wheezing, like dying. And then his dad gets there. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you're safe, daughter. Yada, yada, yada. And then, oh, well, now you got to worry about Hamlet. He's actually the one that's on his last cahoots. What I think the context was for this was he had the zoomies because he was coming up with a fever back then. And fevers are deadly. He got unlucky. Dealt a bad hand. So then this kid gets no words in, dies. Everyone's there. Everyone's super sad. It's like, oh no. Oh my gosh, he's dead. And thing was, they didn't even think that he was going to die. They thought the daughter was going to die the whole life. They're like, oh yeah, she's frail. She's got to die eventually. And nothing you can do about it. We're surprised she made it this long. And then meanwhile, this kid's over here doing a life force transfer, giving the rest of his life like it's the Death Note or something. And yeah, he passes away. This is the moment in the movie that it really picks up because this whole family that you saw getting close together, you think that they conquered everything and then they deal with this tragedy of grief. So with this grief, something's happened to the family dynamic. Things are sour, bitter. The light that we saw a second ago is all but gone. The days are cloudy, at least they feel cloudy, and the color is gone. Agnes and Shakespeare start arguing because he's never home. He's always ignoring his family now to work on this new play. You get to see both perspectives here because Agnes is mad. Why isn't my husband, the father of my children, helping us get through this hard time? Why does he still insist on working on these plays? He doesn't care about this family. He doesn't do enough. Meanwhile, it shows what he's doing. And he's not just working idly by. He makes it to publish his own play. And this play is unlike anything else that anyone's seen at the time. Everyone's believing in it because of how promising it looks, how real it is, how it's a true tragedy. So Agnes over here feels like he's not really grieving over the death of his son. Meanwhile, he's trying to find an outlet for all that grief, but doing it alone. So then there's turmoil there, and it all leads to a moment when you find out that he's named this new play that he's written after his son Hamlet, and everyone loves it. Agnes, furious, decides to go see what this play is because it's not right. How dare he name this play after their son just to get extra sympathy? But upon seeing the actual play, we find out it was nothing of the sort. In fact, this play, what this special play does, it allows everyone to feel the grief that this family had felt. So Agnes, who was going from feeling of no one understands me, no one feels this hurt that I'm feeling, Shakespeare gives that outlet so everyone can feel how they feel for losing their son. And that's how the movie ends, with them understanding the cycle of grief. That was very nice. It was a very, very great movie. Would I recommend it if you can't sit through it? Hell no. I do not recommend that movie if you cannot sit through 2 hours and something of build up, but slow build up. That's like a little boring, honestly. It took me a little bit to get into this movie, but once I did, I was hooked. The overall message, I think, was a great one. Now, there's another movie that came out around the same time. It came out last year. This movie is called Twinless. Now, this movie takes all that grief that we just built up with this other movie, Hamlet, and it twists it around and throws it down the stairs. Because what Twinless does differently when it's expressing people going through grief is it shows that some people can feel grief, want to heal from the grief, and will put other people down or feel worse so that they can feel better about their own grief. That's how this story starts. So spoilers for Twinless if you haven't seen it. This movie's a lot faster paced. It's a good watch. It's a dark comedy. So I do recommend watching this movie if you're interested. So Twinless is about this twin who ends up passing away. And then this other twin, Roman, goes to the city to pick up the pieces from where this twin has died and sort of move all their stuff out. And along the way, Roman sort of stays in the city. And we find out that he's going to like these support groups. He's actually doing a fair bit of healing. And he meets this other person who's missing a twin called Dennis. We later find out that Dennis doesn't actually have a twin and he was stalking Roman's brother twin. And he's the direct reason why Roman's brother twin had died through an accident. After one encounter, by the way, thought that Roman's twin was the love of his life. So then he started stalking and then Rocky, the deceased twin, dies. It's a wild movie. So you think after accidentally killing somebody that you would just like back off and not want to be a part of it, but no, he decides to start stalking Roman and see that Roman's in this whole group, and then that's why he pretends to have a twin or to have had a twin. So he pretends to be a deceased widowed twin. I think it's called widowed. I don't know what it's called for if you lose a twin, but he pretends to be someone who's lost a twin. So after this process, he's already seen that this person exists. He followed him when Roman was in town for the funeral of Rocky, and that's how he ended up at the meeting with all the widowed twins. Under the worst of intentions, befriends Roman, helps Roman through the grieving process of his twin, but while also stringing up a bunch of lies about himself to make himself seem cooler to Roman, to be better friends. All these lies begin to unravel when Roman's life actually starts to get better. He gets a good stable job, he gets a girlfriend, and he's going up and doing a lot better for himself after the mourning and death of his twin. And all of Dennis's lies begin to unravel, and you see that no one actually likes Dennis because there's always like this weird aura around him where things don't really make quite as much sense, and he doesn't seem genuine. Unlike Roman, who is blissfully ignorant, and a lot of people would assume that he is not the smartest, and he even says it himself, but he's honest, and that's the difference between these two people. So Dennis gets closer and closer, and eventually he tries to take this weird spot where he's like, oh yeah, we can both be each other's twins that we're missing, which is weird. He never had a twin, but whatever. He's actively making this grieving process harder for Roman. Why? Just so he could feel better about himself, all while trying to seduce Roman towards the end of the movie. He has a couple drinks with him, and then knowing Roman straight, that Roman doesn't have any interest, he tries to suck on his toes and do weird stuff, which wasn't even the last straw. The last straw was finding out about all these lies. Once these lies are found out, you see that the regular steps for the grieving process happen for Roman. He's not been able to move on from his twin, but he's been able to have a life again outside of his deceased twin. And it is really satisfying to see all of Dennis's lies get unraveled. There's so much anxiety, but yeah, it was a great watch. There were a lot of funny moments. It was a great dark comedy. And yeah, after seeing these two movies in retrospect, I just wanted to make a video talking about grief and grieving portrayed in movies, especially movies that were semi-recent. So although this subject might have been a little harder to deal with, I'm glad that I did talk about this and that I was able to make a different type of video. It's also really great when there's two good movies that talk about grief in their own different ways and how it can be selfishly or selflessly. But yeah, if you have any movies that came out recently that also talk about the grieving process or that you perceive to have the grieving process, let me know in the comments. I'd really like to watch and see. I like watching new movies that give me different perspectives. And if you've seen any of these two movies, let me know also what you thought about the layout, about these characters. Me personally, out of these two grieving movies, I did prefer Twinless, but that's because it was a much easier watch compared to Hamlet.